You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 597, Homestead.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Norman Lau.
And I'm John Champion. Each week on Mission Log, we connect on an intellectual and emotional level with an episode of Star Trek, seeing what it can tell us about ourselves, all while looking for the morals, meanings, and messages, and seeing if it stands the test of time.
This week, Homestead, the one where Neelix, and everyone else, including us, is shocked to find a group of Talaxians living far away from home in the middle of an asteroid. There may be no place like home, but you can get something close to it with enough cargo ships and love.
I'll be right back with trivia after Norman tells all of you how to reach us.
We'd love to hear from you. Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek. Find us on Facebook at Mission Log Pod and on Instagram and Threads at Roddenberry Podcasts. The conversation always continues in the Mission Log Discord with near-daily live events and 24/7 chat about the topics you love. Get your invitation to our private server by joining patreon.com/missionlog. While you're at it, one of the most important ways to help your favorite podcasts is to leave a 5-star rating and review at Apple or your preferred podcast platform. And remember, your comments could be used on the show. And now, here's John Champion with this week's trivia.
All right, we have a story written by Raph Green, and with this entry, we're at the end of Raph's run in the Trek franchise, which started way back in Voyager Season 6 with the episode Virtuoso. He has picked up a number of writing gigs since then, landing on shows from Legend of the Seeker to Perception, and most recently, The Cleaning Lady. This was directed by LeVar Burton, and now we are done with all 8 of LeVar's directorial credits on Voyager, but don't worry, he's got 9 more to go on Enterprise. And you probably noticed right at the beginning of the episode, we have a very specific reference, day and date to First Contact Day, which makes this episode take place on April 5th, 2378. Now, Homestead originally aired on May 9th, 2001, so they're only off by about a month and 377 years. Now, let's meet our guest stars. Welcome back to Scarlett Palmer's as Naomi Wildman, who we haven't seen since Shattered, which was episode 11 of this season. And this episode is her final Voyager appearance. Now we have Nakona, the head of the miners, and he is played by John Kenton Scholl. This episode marks his 6th and final appearance on Star Trek, and half of those were as Klingons. He appeared in TNG Firstborn, and then on DS9 in Return to Grace, and in Voyager Barge of the Dead. But along the way, he also played a Bajoran in DS9 in the episode Shakar, and then on Voyager, he was unrecognizable as one of the indigenous people in Basics Part 2. One of the other miners, unnamed, just like this whole alien species, is played by Christian R. Conrad, notable because he, too, is a returning Trek guest actor. He played a Bajoran on DS9 in the episode The Darkness and the Light, but we saw Christian in his fully human form because he had a very prominent role as Dunbar. That was Starling's assistant in the Voyager two-parter Future's End 1 and 2. This episode also marks his final Trek appearance so far. And let's meet the Talaxians. Oxalon is played by Rob LaBelle. Now, interestingly, we've seen Rob before. Not only was he on Voyager already, but in one of those appearances, he was a Talaxian. A different Talaxian, to be precise, since he was a prisoner in the episode Faces. But honestly, he looks quite similar in both versions of the makeup. And look, since he was unnamed in Faces, you can try to headcanon that as best you can, that they're the same character. We also saw him looking a bit more like himself, not as a fully human, but he was one of the Takarians in the Voyager episode False Prophets. And this is Rob's last Trek credit to date. Ian Meltzer played the young boy Brax, and Ian racked up a number of acting credits when he was young, going all the way back from Touched by an Angel to Friends to a recurring role on the Hughleys, and he even made a stop by Reno 911 in 2005. After acting, he did spend some time behind the camera, even working in the art department on Dexter. Julianne Christie plays Dexa. Julianne's big screen debut came with a small part in Encino Man in 1992, and she has appeared in a number of feature films like Eddie Murphy's The Nutty Professor and the Ben Affleck-Gwyneth Paltrow vehicle Bounce. She also has a lot of TV roles on her resume, recently on Grimm, Lucifer, and The Good Doctor. Older credits include NYPD Blue, Men Behaving Badly, and she does come around for one more Star Trek episode when she makes an appearance on Enterprise. In recent years, Julianne has stretched out behind the camera as well, producing and directing the short film How to Make a Monster.
Welcome to the shallow end of the Delta Quadrant. We're approaching the last stop before the Alpha Quadrant. If you're not planning on going to the Alpha Quadrant, now would be an excellent time to disembark.
Prologue. It's first contact day aboard Voyager, and that means a theme party, and it's got everything. A homemade pierogi, a jukebox, and a Vulcan greeting. You know, it's that thing where Tuvok is forced to say, "Live long and prosper," to celebrate when humans first met Vulcans and didn't immediately blow it. The crew is in good spirits, even Tuvok, who does his duty but stops short of dancing. Neelix makes a vow. Before Voyager gets home, he's going to get Tuvok to cut a rug. The party is interrupted when Chakotay brings news from the bridge. They've detected several hundred Talaxian life forms a few light years away. Suddenly, it's not just a party anymore. For Neelix, it's personal. Act 1. Voyager arrives at an asteroid belt where they confirm the readings. Hundreds of Talaxian life signs, but no response to hails. Neelix is anxious, watching from the bridge like someone waiting on a blind date. Tuvok, Tom, and Neelix take the Delta Flyer in for a closer look. There's time for Neelix and Tuvok to bicker about the latter's lack of dancing, but no sooner do they approach the asteroid where the life signs were detected than they're hit with thermolytic charges. The flyer takes a beating and crash lands on the surface. All three are knocked out cold. Neelix wakes up in the care of a Talaxian woman named Dexa, who's got plenty of questions. What's he doing here? Why are they armed? And what's with his non-Talaxian friends? Neelix does his best to explain, learning in return that these Talaxians have gone to great lengths to avoid contact with outsiders. And those charges? That's just miners cracking rocks, nothing personal. Dex's son, Brax, pokes his head in, curious about their unexpected guest, but gets shooed away. Neelix tries to leave to check on his crewmates, only to find Dex's hospitality comes with a force field. Act 2. With no word from the away team, Janeway is ready to launch a search mission, until a miner named Nakona hails Voyager claiming ownership of the asteroid field. He insists on handling the search himself, and he warns them not to interfere with his ongoing detonations. Janeway agrees, for now. Back on the asteroid, Neelix wakes to find Brax alone and poking around. The kid's got a model ship, and Neelix correctly IDs it, a small thing that earns a little curiosity and trust. He wants to see Voyager. Neelix says that's not exactly easy since he's being confined. When Dexa returns, Brax hides, and Neelix covers for him. Dexa brings in Council Regent Oxalon, who informs Neelix that he and his friends are free to go, and strongly encouraged not to stick around. Outsiders aren't exactly welcome here, but Neelix says he'd like to stay and chat. Oxalon doesn't say yes, but he doesn't say no either. Dexa gives Neelix a tour of the Talaxian colony, built from salvaged ships and carved into the rock. 500 people live here, and every square meter says survival. In their chat, Dexa reveals that her husband died, and Brax is a good kid. She knows he snuck in to see Neelix. She returns him to the Delta Flyer, where Tuvok and Tom are making repairs. Neelix reflects on the visit. Wasn't what he hoped for, but seeing his people again? worth it. Just as they get sensors back online, they find a stowaway, Brax. Neelix sneaks him home again, but on the way, they walk into a confrontation. Nakona is threatening to flatten the asteroid unless the Talaxians evacuate. Dexa stands her ground and gets shoved for it. Brax hurls a rock in protest. Neelix backs him up, literally stepping in and grabbing a weapon from Nakona's goon. The standoff ends for now, but Nakona gives him a deadline, 3 days to clear out. Act 3. Dexa and Oxalon thank Neelix for standing up to the miners, but they're realistic. There's no way the colony can evacuate in 3 days. Neelix suggests calling in a professional negotiator, Captain Janeway. Oxalon agrees to meet her, and Dexa even lets Brax tag along to see Voyager. First stop, the bridge, and Brax wants to know where Neelix sits. Chakotay and Harry jump in to save him from having to answer. Neelix has too many roles to be pinned down to one station. Ambassador, morale officer, trade negotiator, you name it. Over in astrometrics, Seven pulls up a view of Talax. Neelix and Dexa share a quiet moment over the image, and Dexa gently explains to Brax why going home isn't an option. When they run into Naomi, Brax finds a playmate his own age and follows her to the holodeck. Left alone, Dexa opens up about her late husband. He was killed for the crime of farming for his family outside of a restricted zone on a planet where they had settled. Then they came to the asteroid. She says Brax hasn't been this happy in years after encountering Voyager. Neelix starts to realize what's happening between them and quietly excuses himself, saying he needs to rest before the next day's negotiations. Neelix makes his pitch to Nakona about mutually using the asteroid for energy, and he gets the best deal that he can. The Talaxians won't be forced to evacuate in 3 days, but they will have to leave. Janeway agrees to transport them and their equipment to the nearest M-class planet. Dexa and Brax are clearly disappointed, and as they leave Voyager, Neelix watches in shame. Act 4. Neelix turns to Tuvok for advice. How can the Talaxians protect themselves on a new world if hostile neighbors are just a warp away? Tuvok admits there's no easy answer, but if they were to mount a defense, staying put might be their best bet. He even hypothetically suggests building a shield grid around the asteroid, but says it would require a leader willing to take the first swing. Neelix asks if Tuvok might volunteer. He declines by citing the Prime Directive, but he drops a rare compliment bomb instead. Neelix has the skills, the instincts, and the heart to lead. Hypothetically, of course. With that pep talk echoing in his ears, Neelix tells Janeway that he's heading back to the asteroid on his own, in his own ship. Since he's not technically Starfleet, he reasons, the Prime Directive doesn't apply. Janeway gently reminds him that he's every bit a part of her crew, then lets him go, knowing that this mission is personal. Back on the asteroid, Neelix explains the plan to Oxalon and the others. A ship, and with Neelix as escort, will fly a pattern around the colony, shooting shield emitters like missiles directly into the surface. Once tied into the power grid, the defense network will be self-sustaining. Of course, once the miners figure it out, they'll strike. Oxalon balks at the idea of provoking a fight, but Neelix reminds him relocation doesn't guarantee safety either. They've built a home here. Isn't it worth defending? Oxalon agrees, and the Talaxians get to work. Neelix departs for the mission with a kiss from Dexa. Act 5. Just 2 shield emitters away from completing the grid, the miners strike. Neelix scrambles to intercept the incoming charges, but when his weapons are knocked out, he braces to kamikaze the next one, until the Delta Flyer, commanded by Captain Janeway, swoops in for the save. Oxalon gets the last emitter locked in place, and when the next detonation hits, the new shields hold. Nakona nopes out of there, and the asteroid colony is finally safe. Neelix bids farewell, promising to stay in touch with Dexa, Brax, and his new Talaxian friends. Back aboard Voyager, Neelix catches up with Naomi, but things have changed. She's growing up, and he's starting to feel like maybe his role for her and others is winding down. Late at night in the mess hall, Janeway offers him a new path. With Starfleet maintaining comms in the Delta Quadrant, they'd like an official ambassador on the ground. The role is voluntary, naturally, but the implication is clear. Neelix doesn't have to choose between the Talaxians and Starfleet. He can belong to both. On his way to the shuttle bay, Neelix is met with a silent honor guard, the Voyager crew standing at attention as he walks the length of the corridor. No fanfare, no farewell speech, just respect. As he reaches the door, Tuvok stops him with a nod, then finally wiggles one foot. Neelix's bet pays off. Mr. Vulcan dances. Barely. Live long and prosper, Tuvok says. Neelix smiles, steps through the door. He returns to the asteroid to find his new family, Dexa and Brax, waiting with open arms. The end.
You know, John, as much as I loved your recap, I'd like to suggest something.
Please.
Okay, usually I give you the highest scores, and I'm a little jealous because your recaps always get the highest scores. So I'd like
thank you.
I'd like to produce this album for you.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so the album, I would like to suggest the album name Dex's Midnight Raiders.
That's the perfect album for this episode.
All right.
Yes.
But you aren't without a score because you have such great hits as Nakona's Goon.
Yeah.
Done to the tune of Jesse's Girl, which I think would be amazing.
Love that.
Mr. Vulcan Dances, which I think that's going to pull a lot of heartstrings. But I think the most controversial one is Hypothetical Compliment Bomb, which it's very prog for me, but I think we need at least a good 14 to 16 minute song on one side of the album.
I thought that was going to be actually a tribute song to George Clinton, Parliament Funkadelic.
Oh, sure, yeah, P-Funk.
Yeah, anyway, you can do that too.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, let's get into it. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the compliments for the weird wordplay here.
Compliment bombs.
Compliment bombs.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Now, okay, very important to me that we start out with food and we don't get a good look at the other food in the mess hall. There is a lot of it kind of spread around. There are some prickly pears when we stop and we chat with the doctor for a moment. And then there are pierogi on that platter. And let's just be very clear. They're not pierogies, okay, because pierogi is plural. Pierogi is singular. And if you ever see a sign that says pierogies with an apostrophe S, then just get out of there because you're in for a bad time. I did wonder, though, how they were being served. It looked like they were on a bed of like brown grass. I didn't quite did not. Yeah, I want them with fried onions and bacon and sour cream. I just want it to be a mess. So you're just full of regret and pierogi after you're done.
A mess of pierogi. That sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Question: holographic or replicated jukebox?
Ooh, you could just have a hollow emitter in there and say, put a jukebox in the corner.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been cool.
A nice Wurlitzer or something like that. But it's also kind of too bad that if it was a holographic jukebox, then they could have used the holodeck to actually recreate Bozeman.
Oh, that would have been fun, right?
Right.
Statue up, do the whole thing.
Exactly.
I like that idea. Yeah. I mean, look, overall, great reference to First Contact Day or
Thirst Contact Day.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if it did not reference Thirst Contact.
That is one of the all-time best jokes. I looked it up, and I guess this is the first on-screen reference to First Contact Day that we have. Obviously, you had First Contact, the event, happen in the movie First Contact, but this is the first reference to a First Contact day. So that is really cool. After the movie, of course, So I love the little callbacks to the movie, like the jukebox. I mean, heck, that could have been the same prop from the movie.
Could have been, yeah.
Could have been. I love the call out to, the pierogi being Cochrane's favorite food. That's fun. Guess we'll have to wait a few years before we work in a First Contact Day salmon, which would go well with pierogi.
Sure.
So that's fine. Yeah.
So in trivia, you brought up that First Contact, or I should say First Contact Day was 377 plus 1 month when, before this aired. So on May 9th, 2001, this aired. First Contact, the actual movie, premiered on November 22nd, 1996. So if that were the case, then why not pull more kind of like the references? Like, you have the jukebox. So why doesn't Neelix encourage Tuvok to do the ooby dooby?
I know. I guarantee you rights. I guarantee you that's it. So, yeah.
I would have loved to have seen Tim do what James Cromwell did. Yeah.
Yeah. That would have been awesome. Yeah. I love Janeway just laying down the law to Tuvok, like, dance, I say, that's, and of course we get to have Neelix dancing, fortunately this time with shoes on. So I'll take that. Yeah. Also, look, as a non-dancer myself, Neelix needs to lay off on Tuvok just a little. Like, come on. He said he doesn't want to dance, but just settle down.
He used to see Footloose a couple times.
Yeah.
I liked the CGI of the Delta Flyer passing through like all of the asteroids in the asteroid field.
Yeah.
I would love to see more of like the deflector technology, like in the special effects, seeing like little rocks and stuff like that, like bounce off, because that's what
bounce off. Yeah, that would have been cool. And it's impressive crash sequence for the flyer, but I am going to have lots of questions about that because, they lost shields, but they're just sitting on the surface of an asteroid, one that is large enough to have gravity, obviously, but no atmosphere. So again, questions how all this works.
You know what? Neelix was obviously knocked out, and he came to when Dexa started administering first aid, and I was hoping to see he and Dexa start talking in their native Talaxian language at the start.
Yeah, I had to headcanon that and just think like, okay, that's what's going on here. It has to be.
Yeah, I just love seeing that kind of stuff.
Back. Yeah, that would have been fun. The room that he wakes up in, though, I mean, doesn't all this stuff carved out of the asteroid, it kind of has a Star Wars vibe, right? With that kind of, the dark walls and kind of the electronic technology like plugged into the stone wall surroundings. It just, has that kind of a look that we don't really get in Star Trek too much.
Well, it's either that or a giant slug comes out sometime later out of the asteroid.
There's that too. And Minox.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm just wondering, like, are all like the Talaxians standoffish? Because we've seen several Talaxians in the past, in the 7 years that Voyager's been on, and they've all been kind of paranoid and tense.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, was this because of Jitrell and the Metreon Cascade? Were they a more peaceful, accepting, embracing, welcoming race before that happened?
No, I think absolutely that's part of it. Also, Jitrell and the Metreon Cascade, great band.
Right.
They were so good. Yeah. Nokona and his whole species who go unnamed, along with that other guy who is part of his species, one of the miners. Mm-hmm. That makeup, that alien design, I'm going to park it here and just say I don't like it. I do not like it at all. It looks like, so there was a period in the 70s, maybe into the early 80s, where like if you were doing a robot costume on somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't afford to do the full C-3PO and like do a molded thing that is an actual. Sometimes you just do like a foam latex appliance that kind of looked mechanical-ish, and this reminded me of that, and I did not like the look. I'm sorry, Michael Westmore, I love you still. Yeah,
I can't help every time you say miners. It's not you. It's just my headcanon. I always hear miners, not miners.
Yeah,
you lost me.
Yeah,
from Galaxy Quest, the great Alan Rickman. Okay, so if Voyager sensors picked up like hundreds of Talaxian life signs, why didn't they pick up Nakona's and his crew's life signs as well?
Yeah, and ships and weapons.
All that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I liked how Neelix, he refers to the model ship that Brax has, and he's like making up names where like, why don't you call it the Furfly, which of course reference to that Furfly that Neelix had in his ship. Yeah. And we refer to it, but then I thought, hey, look, as of this airing, we're only a year away from Firefly. Furfly could have been a whole other show. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's great. Oh, no, I'm going to Firefly.
Yeah, great show.
I was thinking, okay, so you have these handful of Talaxians, and I'm just wondering, whatever happened to Neelix's friend Wix?
Oh, yeah.
Did he just get left behind? Because obviously, Voyager is like cruising as far as they, and fast as they can, to the Beta Quadrant. But I'm just wondering if Wix just happened to be there because, all of Talaxian people are, within this asteroid. So,
well, I've got a lot of questions about the time and distance here as well. But okay. And then we learned that they broke up their ships, and now they use geothermal energy from the asteroid's core to melt the ice on the surface. And I asked myself, how big is this asteroid? And how many resources can you keep using up until you can't use it anymore? But all right. Fine.
How is it that we have not yet done this joke? Targeting asteroid. I do like the cargo ship sets, though, like you're saying, where Neelix came to in that kind of cavernous apartment room. Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah. Very Star Wars. And by the way, just a little trivia note, because Sam and others will, I'm sure, be ready to point it out. Largest known asteroid in our solar system is 1 Ceres, and it is, that's Ceres, not series like, you're watching a TV series. And it is about 590 miles in diameter. Okay, that's big, but I'm going to say right now, probably not big enough to have a whole lot of gravity, and probably not big enough to have a whole lot of resources to be able to constantly use. But anyway. Yeah, and I do like that with Neelix covering for Brax, and it gets busted later. It's just fun, and I like the bond that it creates between Neelix and Brax.
Well, that kind of, I wouldn't say it telegraphed anything for me, but there always has been this underlying current in his arc with children, Talaxian children especially. And I liked it when Neelix said, I got to meet some of my people again, even if it was a short visit. Who knows? It's probably the last time I'll ever see another Talaxian. Yeah. Now, yes, Johnny is a very good actor, but you can kind of tell that the story is leaning in a certain way.
Yeah. You could have, just a minor rewrite on that line could have kept it a little more ambiguous, just so you really feel, is Neelix thinking about this? Is he not? But that puts almost too fine a point on it there, Okay, look, again, I'm sorry to be so obsessed with this asteroid, right? Did they drag Delta Flyer into part of this asteroid that has an airlock? Because they literally just, they're like walking down a corridor, like, we're just going to get in the Delta Flyer again. Oh, look, the kid snuck into the Delta Flyer. How? There's no atmosphere. What are they doing?
My question is, and actually more my observation is, the Delta Flyer has been broken into again?
I again, put a 2-factor code, anything. Yeah. Did you notice inside the mining, inside the asteroid, they're not mining it, but inside the Talaxian settlement, Captain Proton prop in the background that we've seen very often.
Oh, yeah.
Big kind of round thing with the red lights that light up in it. Yeah.
The most important prop in the universe. How is it not in this episode?
I know, that really should have been there somewhere. Yeah. I really like Neelix going full action hero. That was fun to see. And I love Neelix. Like, he's got a plan. Get Janeway to negotiate. Yeah, he knows. Cute scene on the bridge. I like this feeling of, like, take your friends and your friend's kid to work day, and Neelix's friends covering for Neelix in the process. It was nice. It was really good. And then we see Naomi again for the first time in about 10 episodes, 12 episodes. Did she just suddenly grow up?
Yeah.
It felt like we've not seen her now in years, because she's like a different person. Same actor, but yeah.
It's like when you see Naomi and another child, this time Brax, you can see that she's now the older child, by far.
Yeah.
As opposed to being like the only child or the younger child.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Really nice scene between Neelix and Dexa when they're having a heart-to-heart there. Really lovely.
So I timestamped this just in case Starfleet wines and spirits are listening to this. But at 22 minutes, 56 seconds, I don't know what Neelix is pouring, but that decanter is gorgeous.
Yeah, I do admit I had to pause. Had to rewind a little bit. Yep.
Now, I love the decanter But does the glass leaning like the Tower of Pisa make it just, I don't know, is that more romantic that way?
Well, it's romantic and it's a space glass. Also, it's a romantic space glass.
Okay.
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
I love Naomi just casually dropping a line about Tuvix. Really nicely done.
I wonder if Tuvix's crewmates would have covered for him the way they covered for Neelix. No, probably not.
Probably not. Mm-mm.
So I mentioned this before. There's like nothing hits Neelix more in the heart, in the feels, than knowing he's disappointed a child. In this case, Brax.
Yeah.
Right? And again, watching Neelix watch Brax leave, you know where this is going. You almost kind of feel it. Now, again, you kind of put things together, 2 and 2 together, and that this is season 7, and you know that we're coming up to the end of a season. I mean, like, the audience is keeping score. They're doing the count. They're at, episode 22? You know, I don't know. Maybe people had feelings. I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't watch it at the time, so I didn't really follow what was going on with, is he or isn't he?
Yeah. Really like the discussion between Neelix and Tuvok and Astrometrics about everything being hypothetical. But it was really nice to see Tuvok lift up Neelix, but also end it with, you do have some annoying habits.
Oh, you got to do that, right?
Got to, yeah.
So is tactical Tuvok best Tuvok, or is motivational Tuvok best Tuvok?
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, we had Tommy Gun Tuvok.
Finger point Tuvok.
Finger point Tuvok. Yeah. I mean, he's up there. He's up there for sure.
There's a lot going on. So many shades of Tuvok, though. And I love when he said to Neelix, well, do nothing. Wink.
Yeah.
Wink.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm not telling you what to do.
Yeah. Really nice way to ratchet up the stakes a bit, because I love that encounter with Neelix and Janeway in the corridor, and he says, "Are you ordering me not to go?" She says, "That depends on what you're going to do." Just a really nice scene.
There's so much subtext that's dancing around a lot of protocol. So, yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later. I do love seeing Neelix's ship finally in like full CGI, because before it was this, a standard production model, which also was really cool. So Neelix says, no one has worked harder to build this place than you. Isn't it worth defending? So it's kind of like, when you get to deliver the hero speech, you become kind of like part of that inner circle of Paul Atreides lifting up his dagger, or Aragorn like doing the speech, or like, you become the hero. Yeah. And then everyone, you get all kinds of attention and a kiss, all that kind of stuff.
Right. But then, all right, so Janeway swoops in and, Neelix says, you shouldn't be here. You're violating the Prime Directive. I'm like, Neelix, have you met Captain Janeway?
Right.
She's, you've been there for 7 years, my guy. All right.
Yeah. Janeway says, following up to what you're saying, Janeway said, we're just helping a friend in distress. So if that's the case, right, that she being Janeway and Tuvok could have legitimately interfered with all of the resources at their disposal because they're just helping a friend.
Yeah.
So why all the games? Just say,
everybody's got warp capability. They have like a de facto alliance with at least this Talaxian.
Yeah.
Come on. They're friends.
It's like, because he's an ambassador to Talax, so now by default he is an ambassador to Starfleet, and Starfleet now protects their allies, which are the rest of the Talaxians. But you know what? No log entry, no foul. So
no, we know how that works. Yeah. Return to a moment earlier with Naomi. Now we have her in this final scene with Neelix, and I guess she has grown up, and even in this episode, she seems more mature in that moment in the final act than when we ran into her in the corridor earlier, and she was on her way to the holodeck. Just a really nice to see that difference in the actor, but the difference in the character as portrayed.
But you can also feel like, okay, I know that tone and I know that answer, even though you're not saying that answer with the tone that I think that you're saying it in. Yeah. And that's basically shorthand for that Starfleet for, I don't really need a godfather anymore. More importantly, though, Chakotay is teaching classes.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Are any of those classes how to pick up certain people? Because, I'm just saying.
Oh, well, they might be pugilism.
Oh,
As
true.
we know that famously,
Right.
he has a long history as a boxer and anthropology
Sure.
and all these other things.
Religious studies.
Religious studies, all these things we know deeply about Chakotay.
Right.
Man, this scene in the mess hall late at night, Janeway and Neelix, kudos to them. Kudos to the actors for playing those characters just right in the moment, but also kudos to LeVar Burton for knowing what that scene didn't need.
Yeah.
And what it didn't need is anything other than the actors in a dark room talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's perfection by editing away anything that is unnecessary.
Well, sure. It's letting the actors showcase their talent, letting the audience kind of just get drawn into the emotion of it. And there is, I think, a certain revelation that Janeway needs to make that decision for him. There are people there, they're at work and they're like, you know what? I need to go, but it's a lot easier if someone else says, you know what? I think there's a better opportunity for you elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that helps make, that decision. Especially for Neelix, it's like, I don't want to disappoint anybody. I don't want to disappoint my crew, but I also have this other responsibility that's kind of like the calling of my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, could we have not had I don't know, like a Samantha Wildman in the lineup?
Right.
See Neelix go away.
Oh my God.
Or like a Tal Celeste or a Baxter. Anybody who we might recognize until we got to the last few feet with, the main crew. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed. No, I was a lot disappointed in just not having that, especially for like a goodbye scene. But Tuvok's goodbye was strong.
Oh my God. Every time. Got me every time. Yeah.
So at the end, though, I was waiting for Neelix to show up, and he had Dexa in one arm and Brax in the other arm, and like Sam Gamgee at the end of The Lord of the Rings. It's just kind of like saying, well, I'm back.
Reserve your 2 or 3 bedroom asteroid apartment now, but hurry. Supplies, such as air and gravity, are limited, unless they aren't.
You know the old saying, Norman, be it ever so dreary, there's no place like home.
Yeah.
Even if it's inside an asteroid and you've got no light, no windows, and no way to escape. Except apparently a door you can just walk out of and just hop right onto the surface in case there's a shuttle or something there waiting for you.
If you can break into the shuttle, which is probably not that
pretty easy to do. So you just have to hold your breath long enough and
not freeze.
And not freeze and not bounce far enough on the reduced gravity of said asteroid to get there. Look, I'm just saying I think the asteroid is a weird choice. But and I'm not saying I'm not judging where we have landed, where we have ended up with these Talaxians. Maybe I just need a little bit more context about why these Talaxians settled right here, a very long way away from Talax. I'm not sure how they got there even. But again, why here? Because think about it. We've seen Voyager jump at the hands of Kess and using a transwarp conduit or part thereof, and then Q gave them a little extra push home. All this stuff that happens, these Talaxians, and that's been over the course of 6 years, right? Mm-hmm. These Talaxians, if they left around the same time that the war happened, so a couple of years, say, before Neelix met up with Voyager, okay, I'm thinking that is dozens and dozens and dozens of years to get out to where they are. This is very far away. And it seems like if you've got ships that are able to cross star systems, you can go to another M-class planet. I don't know why they're putting it all in on this asteroid.
Well, there was a part of the episode where wherever they go, they seem to be shunned and then forced to leave.
Which is horrible.
Yeah. So I think they just really don't have a choice. They have to be able to go to the point where they can refuel, resupply, and they're like, you know what? Maybe we're just out of opportunities to refuel and resupply, and that's it. But
Yeah.
there are occasions where there are forces out there in the universe that are just going to corner you to the point where the only thing that you have left is you're back to the sea. In some cases, literally.
Let me point out, if you turn around, there is a whole pleasure planet. This is right there. You know, and I'm making light of this, and I don't want to belabor this point too much. Part of this is sort of affects my emotional investment in the episode, because I really think, like, look, I'll skip ahead far enough to say that I think this episode has a lot of strengths, and particularly with the characters involved. I think the choice of making it weird, like an asteroid, where you can't grow anything, you have no atmosphere, you have no air, atmosphere literally and figuratively, you got no air. That is a tough conceptual thing, even given the circumstances that are very specific, like the Hakonians who are still occupying Talax, and like the idea that they have been shunned from other places. You know, we've run into some other Talaxians along the way. We're also a very, very, very far away from Talax, which means that maybe these 5 other ships that have gotten to this particular asteroid, maybe we're missing a part of the story where they also got pushed along forward by a wormhole or a transwarp conduit or something, because it honestly, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yep. Well, yeah, because we had, Kess had the gift that helped Voyager move forward, of course. So there were a lot of instances where, how did that happen? If we can put that aside, we've made concessions in logic before when it comes to this show. I think when you have to stay and establish, like, okay, what are we doing? Are we going to just pick up and run again, or are we going to find a place where we can call our home finally again? Because, if they converted their ships, that means they're going to stay, and they're very resourceful people. So they're going to convert technology into things like hydroponics, oxygen producing machinery, et cetera, et cetera. But they can only do that if they stand their ground and if they stay. Because the only way it's kind of like setting up camp. It's almost like, Far and Away, the film with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman about kind of like the Irish settlement of the Western America. If you just keep picking up your stakes and moving to a next plot of land, you'll never be able to build anything. And believe me, like the Irish were, they were pretty fairly shunned when it came to being able to build better lives. So if there's the opportunity, then and if it's worth fighting for, and if you want to create a future, a family, generations, a place where people can be safe, I think that's the point of this episode. And I think that it's sometimes, you just can't be pushed around anymore.
Well, but let's talk about that a minute, because this episode does have a lot of the sort of turning points, save the cat moments, if you will, for a lot of characters who have to come into their own, and they have to make the decision, what am I going to do now? Who will I become now? Obviously, with Neelix, that is a part of it. But I really like this just brief exchange between Oxalon and Dexa, where Oxalon says, fighting back has never done anything but cause us more trouble. And Dexa says, and what has running away ever done for us? And what I like about that exchange is that it's a pretty good argument that summarizes both sides here. And there isn't a single correct answer, except in the case that one of those wins. Right? So if they stay and if they fight back, that is the correct answer if they are successful with their shield deployment, and if they get the miners to leave them alone. For how long? For a month, a year, 5 years, a decade, 50 years? Will the next generation of Talaxians have to deal with those same miners or other miners that come along? Or do you go to a nearby M-class planet where maybe there aren't that many other inhabitants already? You can set up a spot, and maybe that is the right. Maybe you did need to run away, because I believe it was Tuvok who has pointed out sometimes that retreat is the logical answer. That is the right thing to do. And maybe if you retreat and you go to another planet, then maybe it's 5 or 10 or 50 or 100 years before the next thing comes along that threatens you.
And what, just takes and go?
No. Set up your shield generators there on a place that's got sunlight and wheat fields. I don't know. You know?
I mean, I get what Tuvok's saying, but it's a lot easier when you have Starfleet resources backing you up with that kind of money. But
Sure.
these people got nothing. They basically have tents made out of ships. And
Right, but they have shield generators, and they have a giant starship saying, we'll take you wherever you want to go. So I think the shield generator thing is a great idea, which could also be deployed in another place.
what if there's no starship anymore to help them to go to the next planet? I mean, what are they going to do? Run every single time?
No. Set up those shield generators. Day one, we're going to take you to a planet. We're going to set you up here. Shield generators, boom.
It's not the technology, it's the principle. The principle is stand your ground. Shield generators notwithstanding. Because if the shield generators hold, but then a technology, an advanced civilization wants that planet and gets around the shield generators, then what?
That's the whole point in the episode. It's a risk anywhere. It's a risk anywhere you go. I think that risk would be more worth taking on a place that was more worth taking the risk. And I get it. Look, I'm the outsider here. I'm not the Talaxian who's running away from miners or Hakonians or anybody else. I come from a position of privilege on this. But I will say that given a choice, when you've got somebody who's willing to take you somewhere and help you set up tactically, because I imagine Neelix might have stayed, and maybe they would have learned a lesson. Oh, yeah, we do need better defenses. We need to stand our ground. We can do it over there as opposed to right here. Because remember, they almost died in the process. We almost lost Neelix. They almost didn't get that last shield generator set up at the time.
I just think that there's going to be a point in time. Like I said, it's not about where they do it. It's that they choose to do it because they have to do it. Doesn't matter where. You know, it can be on the greatest, it can be on a planet made of gold or anything like that. You know, but the thing is that if you don't take a stand for yourself when you need to take a stand, you never will. Doesn't matter where you are. I take this from a point of, you know, kind of being pushed around when I was, you know, younger in a Midwestern town because I was Asian. So I'm like, what am I going to do? Let the bullies keep pushing me around, not let me play football, not let me play basketball, not let me like participate in things where I'm completely capable physically or otherwise to be able to participate? Like, no, because that's what it's like. Well, no, you're right. You know, I shouldn't be able to do that. I'm different. I'm other. I can't be a part of your society. Yeah. No, that's not this. No, I'm going to stand here because I have the right to stand there, right? Like the miners don't have any claim on it aside from the capitalist claim on it. All right, there's no treaties, there are no mining rights,
and I get it. Some lessons need to be experienced in order to be learned, and it would be one thing for them to say like, "Hey, look, you really need to learn how to stand your ground. Go do it over here where it's safe." I understand the kind of inherent incongruity of that they need to learn how to stand their ground by standing their ground, for sure. I just think that they continue to make tactical errors here. You know, hopefully they'll be fine. Maybe we'll hear back from Neelix one day and see how they're doing.
We'll see.
You know?
Yeah. I had a question, though. So there's something that I'd like to log into the entry books as an actual technological term called the Prime Directive.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Lay it on me.
So there's this classic moral debate in Star Trek. How far should Starfleet intervene? Right.
Okay.
So the Talaxians are threatened by miners who claim the asteroid. Then Janeway and Tuvok, they cite the rules, non-interference, neutrality, diplomatic restraint, right? Neelix is in Starfleet. Neelix is Neelix, but he's advised by people that say, well, hypothetically, if you were going to train the Talaxians in resistance fighting, this is what you should do. And then at the end, well, we're not interfering, we're just helping a friend. So what exactly is that?
Yeah, I know. Because look, we actually don't know all of the stakes. And we don't know everything that potentially faces Voyager. We can kind of guess that Voyager could outgun Nakona's ship. We don't know how many other people with the weird robot makeup appliance from Nakona's species.
I think that's what upsets you the most.
That does. It really does. It bothers me. We don't know how many other people from his species with how much bigger ships can show up and take on Voyager, or as soon as Voyager is out of there, go lay waste to every asteroid, including the Talaxian asteroid in there. So, there is a lot of assumption. And as you've pointed out many times before, Voyager can be kind of slyly unengaged because they have the bigger guns.
Yeah.
They can say, we're just being diplomatic. We're just helping because we have the bigger guns. And if you do encroach, we can blow you out of the sky.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a bit of that going on here.
Like I said, if Janeway really believed in what she was doing with Neelix and saying, like, look, I'm going to skirt all of these protocols because I know how to, first of all, who is she going to log it into? And second of all, who's she going to send it to? And, these after action reports. Right. So why not just do it? Like, again, that's the one thing about this episode that I do have a problem with is like, well, you don't need to, pardon the phrase, pussyfoot around. You can go in there and do what you need to do and help these Talaxians, because by extension, Neelix is an ambassador to Starfleet. Therefore, his people are an ally to Starfleet.
Right.
In the Delta Quadrant. So is ambassador just kind of like this ceremonial title? Does it actually mean anything? Or is he actually something that is going to eventually become part of the Federation by proxy? So if that's the case, then you can enforce it right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Instead of saying, like, hypothetically, I would do all of these things, which, again, you are interfering because they don't have the tactical prowess to be able to do what they're doing. It's like the Magnificent Seven, right? You hire gunslingers because they're really good at slinging guns.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly that. Yeah, I don't know if we can really say here that Janeway is making a principled stand. It really is just to help out her friend. And we have to assume, for all the time that we have spent with our prime example of a Talaxian, that the other Talaxians are worth defending here too. Because remember, Janeway has made some bad tactical decisions in the past about who to align with.
No.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Right?
And I'm not saying that these Talaxians are as bad a decision, but yeah, I mean, this has cornered Janeway in the past where she has made the wrong choice. So, yeah. But all of that, honestly, just comes down to a point of serving the main story at hand, which is, what are we going to do with Neelix? Yeah. And I do have to say that for all the kind of holes that we can poke in this story, I want to come back to that last scene in the mess hall with Janeway and Neelix, because you mentioned it in the observation segment. I love that kind of leadership. And it's not a thing that we see too often from Janeway. I love it every time Janeway just is a badass and cuts down somebody to their core to make a point, because there's something very satisfying about that, about seeing somebody that you agree with being able to take down the enemy. But there is an incredible kind of a blend of leadership and compassion shown with Janeway in that final scene, because she is exactly the kind of leader who is selfless enough to let somebody grow into a new role. And she knows that the way to do it is to encourage them to find that path on their own.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And I can maybe think of, a handful of people in my life who have had that kind of insight and that kind of impact. So whether it was Raf Green or somebody else in the writer's room that kind of shaped that moment, it was so true from a leadership standpoint, but it was also so true from an emotional standpoint. That is exactly the kind of experience that you want to have as an employee, and it's the kind of leadership that we should want to have for ourselves if we ever find ourselves in that kind of position.
Admit it, you'll miss the furry feet, you'll miss the space mutton chops, and most of all you'll miss that homegrown Neelix cooking. Maybe I should have stopped at the furry feet.
Well, John, we have come to the end of Homestead, and I know that we don't say this enough, but if people have just come to Mission Log and you started listening to us, you know at the end of every episode, we start with summarizing our thoughts from the observations to discussions and ask ourselves at the very end here, does this episode hold up today? And then we'll discuss that and then see if there are any morals, meanings, or messages that the miners have mined for us. So, Homestead, John, we're hanging our hat, or are we moving on?
This is a yes and a no for me. Or maybe it's a no and a yes. Maybe it's a no followed by a yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, but I do want to make this one point before I get into that, because it's not necessarily a big point, but I just like what we've done for Neelix's character arc over the series, okay? Because think back, he's been through a lot, and he's probably grown as a character the most, only behind Seven and the Doctor. And obviously those two characters are huge standouts, and they have these huge arcs that we get to keep exploring. But Neelix he's right behind them compared to Janeway, Chakotay, Harry Kim, Tom Paris, and B'Elanna. Those other five that is named, they don't have as big a character arc as Neelix, right? And the influences kind of creep up on him. You know, he's not always aware of the things that are driving him and making him change. And one of the things here that is, I'm sure that Johnny, Ethan Phillips is aware of it. I'm sure that Raf Green was aware of it, but it's not openly discussed in the episode other than Dexa mentioning the Hukonian occupation of Talax. What we don't mention here is Chitrell. And we don't mention Neelix's guilt and shame about sitting out that battle, right? Mm-hmm. So there is influence here on his change to step up and be a leader. I think directly because of that. He dealt with the shame. He dealt with the guilt. Now he's got an opportunity to redeem himself. He takes it. And that is as much motivating factor of him to stay behind and do what he did as it was to get a pep talk from Tuvok.
Would it be fair to say then you would have like Chitrell, Mortal Coil, and now Homestead as kind of like this trilogy of stories? Because Mortal Coil is really where it really broke down Neelix in that sense, like really making face what happened in Chitrell.
That's the episode where he has to realize that his life is what he makes of it.
Yes.
Yeah. And now he's got an opportunity to make something else of it, to change his destiny. Yeah. I don't think the story here is necessarily great. I'm not fully convinced with the setup or the people or with this mini arc from Neelix. The big arc, yes, I am fully convinced of the big arc from it. But for this to be everything just kind of boiled down into the 45-minute format that it is, introduce everybody, Neelix has got to bond with them really quickly, and we got to set up the conflict. And there's just a lot that's crammed into 45 minutes that I'm being asked to buy, and I'm not sure that I do. So that is where I'm not fully in love with this episode, but, and this is a big but, to rebut my discussion there. If the plan was just, all right, we've got to write Neelix's finale as something other than going back to Earth with the rest of the crew, then they absolutely 1,000% nailed those final scenes to make that worthwhile. Not to mention the scenes that came right before those final scenes where you've got Neelix and Janeway's coffee chat. It's counterintuitive here. So the biggest emotional impacts are the ones that are fully earned for our characters. And I'm not sure that just within the context of this episode alone, I'm not sure that everything was fully earned. Because like I said, I think the story itself is a little shaky, right? However, actors like Ethan Phillips and Kate Mulgrew did earn the emotional moments, and they earned those because we, as the audience, have the benefit of having seen them over 7 years endear themselves to us as Neelix and Janeway. So in that respect, it absolutely works.
Yeah.
Look, I have to say, if I have to come down to one answer here, as an episode, just as a standalone episode, I actually don't think it holds up. But you can put an asterisk by that, and you can put a big old footnote by that says it does hold up in the respect that we got a couple of great performances here. We got a really satisfying way to say goodbye to Neelix. If again, like, there's another way that this plays out where he just goes back to Earth and he's happy there and he still gets to be an ambassador and Starfleet signs him up, whatever. There's a whole other way to do that. But the decision was made to say goodbye to his character here. And I think they did that part with heart and emotion and, again, genuine earned moments because we have this hindsight. All of those things work beautifully. So that's the big old footnote you have to take with me saying, not really. So, what do you say, Norman?
No, I understand all that, and I think that's a fair perspective. Because yes, you're right. There's some shaky ground when it comes to kind of like the setup, the technicalities, and kind of like the story. The kind of like the story architecture. Because I do have problems with that too, exactly for the exact same reasons that you've said. But maybe this episode caught me at the right time because I feel that I have to put a lot of that aside, as I've done with a lot of Voyager episodes, and say, okay, does the episode hold up from the standpoint of the inspirational part of the story, which is, what is this story telling us? Why did they decide to separate, the crew at this time, especially probably one of the more well-developed characters of Voyager, which is Neelix? Why do they do this now? What type of emotional impact are they trying to, persuade us to buy in on? And I think because if there's one thing that I feel has been consistent about Voyager up until this point, this is about the family that you choose and not the family that you're born to.
1,000%.
And I think that is done successfully here because Neelix at the start, I will be brutally honest, I could not stand the photos, things that were on like Star Trek Communicator, the Star Trek Voyager magazine, because I think that it didn't tell the proper story. It's just this weird lizard lion alien with really bad makeup. I love Ethan Phillips, loved him all the way back to Benson, right?
Yeah.
But he just, like, the character concept in a still picture didn't work for me. And then, the thing with the Vidians and his lungs, that happened. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Then Jetrel happened. I'm like, okay, all bets are off after that. Mortal Coil, like I said, a bunch of other things, him with Naomi, Tuvix, in a way, his relationship with Tuvok. So all of these things, and like, okay, so why are they doing this to us? This to us now is because when he feels like that scene with Naomi, when he felt like I have done what I've needed to do for this found family, I need to do what is in service to my next found family, his actual biological, cultural, genetic family, the family that was scattered to the winds because of this one particular Mengele type character that basically destroyed Talax, and now is like under occupation. So he needs to bring his people together. And here's the interesting thing. You really see that when, and I'm glad you brought this up in observations, when the crew had to go to bat for him and make like Dexa and Brax feel what, Neelix has learned. Like, he's a diplomat, he's an ambassador, he's a security officer, he's all of these different jobs because he was. Right? Like, none of those things were outright embellishments on his character. Those are things that he tried. He tried so many different things, which made him so interesting to watch. Because at one point in time, he was this or that or the other thing. And he takes everything that he learned because these people need that. They don't have that. They don't have the organizational structure. They don't have the diplomatic ability. They don't have the technical training, which he's learned in engineering and tactics. They don't have the ability to stand up for themselves. He's learned all of that from every single character on Voyager, including Kes. Never forget that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that it makes sense. Like, you know what? Voyager will always stay in contact. We know that the antenna's out there. I could talk to you like when I need to, but these people here, they need me. And sometimes there's nothing more important to somebody when they feel like they need to be needed, because that's the right place where you're supposed to be. Not where you think you should be, because he probably should be with Voyager and finish the story. But he needs to be where he thinks is going to do him the most good, and that's with his people. And yeah, it's heartbreaking to watch. If there's one thing, though, that I really, really I'm going to take a really serious issue with in this episode, is how unemotionally disconnected that entire goodbye was.
I know. They could have spent 60 more seconds just on it,
Like, there was no, I don't know why. Why is that? It's just.
I guess
like
it's timing. But I feel like there's a minute to steal from another part of the episode.
There are many minutes to steal.
Yeah. Just give it to the end.
Yeah, but you're saying a major goodbye to a major character.
Yeah.
Right. And what? Of course, Tuvok that's.
Oh, of course. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
And Janeway got her moment, so we didn't need that again.
Sure.
Because we got that. But
what about the Doctor? The Doctor and
I say,
yeah,
you got the Doctor, and you got Tom, and you got
Naomi.
Where's Naomi? Where's Samantha to thank Neelix for all the babysitting?
Naomi's she was slotted for the days. She could have done a hug or something. This is his goddaughter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And exactly. So that's the kind of thing that bugs me about this episode, not the other stuff that bugs you.
That's fair. No, that's a good thing to bug you. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it holds up just because I think that in a lot of situations today, there are a lot of people that are still trying to figure out, where am I going to plant my flag? Where am I needed?
Yeah.
What does it mean to me? Or who do they mean to me, and what am I to them?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and look, that perfectly leads us to morals, meanings, messages, because for Neelix, he certainly has to walk away with that lesson in a profound way about who he is now versus who he was 6 years ago or 7 years ago when we first met him, versus this shame that he has carried with him in the years prior to that was revealed to us in Chitrell. He gets to go find that new family. That's a beautiful thing. I'll stay a little bit away from Neelix specifically, though, because I want to focus on the Talaxians kind of in general here, because it is Neelix who learns a lesson, but the Talaxians learning a lesson as well. And look, I'm going to counter my argument from before, because they made the right decision to stay and stand their ground. They had to learn when it was the right time to stand one's ground. And if you capitulate, then you'll always have a bully who will take advantage of you. If you always capitulate. Like I said, there are arguments to be made, as Tuvok did, that sometimes retreat is a logical choice. Sometimes it's not. And sometimes you have to push back, especially when morally you are on the right side of the equation. Neelix says it to Oxylan. How do you know there won't be somebody to terrorize you the next place you go? And look, you don't know that. You don't know that Absolutely. I still think there's an argument to be made for the idea that they keep looking for a better place, a place that is better than the inside of an asteroid. I have a lot of strong feelings about that not being the place to raise a child, but it's theirs right now, and it works for them right now, and they should be able to be left alone and live their lives the way they want to live their lives. Well, let's look at this from another angle here as well, that these Talaxians are war refugees. We know about what happened to their homeworld from the Heconians. And look at how resourceful, kind, and helpful they are as a rule, and they keep getting rejected and moved around from one place to another, and all they want is just to live their lives. Is it so hard to just open up a little room, a little safe harbor for the people who need it, because that is the right thing to do? And I know that I've ended a lot of my Morals Meanings messages by saying that I'm only talking about Star Trek. And I want everybody who listens to this podcast to know that whenever you listen to Mission Log, we're only talking about Star Trek.
Well, the aliens are us, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah. I think that I kind of made a lot of my feelings known, especially what I think is the moral center, of the episode. And that is, you have to take the perspective of where you are, who you are, and say, you know what, there's no time like the present to stand your ground if you feel like you have the moral obligation to do so. And I think that that's where we're at with, a lot of some of the greatest morals, meanings, or messages in Star Trek. I mean, it's a very Gene Roddenberry-esque, topic that pops up and gets challenged many times, in the course of a lot of our conversations. But it's protocol. This, in this case, Starfleet protocol is protocol versus what you're saying, empathy, the right thing to do. Because sometimes those things don't necessarily walk hand in hand. You have to make a choice, and you have to do, it doesn't mean if it's like societally correct or politically correct or morally correct, but it has to be ethically correct, right? Because these things are all about, our decisions are made based on whether or not you feel that either you're doing harm to someone or preventing harm being done to someone. It's very easy, but the thing is that a lot of this stuff gets politicized so ridiculously in today's soundbite age. But what Neelix is doing is I've learned throughout the course, and we, the audience, have learned through Neelix throughout the course of these 7 seasons, that if he can take everything that he's learned and bring it to bear, he can save his people for a better future. But he has to start here. He has to start in this one point in time, because if he doesn't start here, when they run and set up camp, then that's what they expect to do. They will always be prey, and they will never be strong enough, reflexive enough, resisting enough, to anything that comes their way that is remotely predatorial. So, because there's always a bigger fish. There's always a Hirogen. There's always a Kazon. There's always a Vidian. There's always some kind of alien out there, Jatrell, who's going to take what they got.
Yeah.
Right? Until they fight back. And fighting back isn't about violence. Fighting back isn't about, taking lives or doing harm. Fighting is about defending what you believe is right. Right?
Yeah.
To the last person. That's not the Star Trek lesson. The Star Trek lesson is you have to believe in your cause. You have to believe in what is right. And getting pushed around is not right. Letting yourself be pushed around is not right. But who's going to be able to teach you that? Right? Mm-hmm. Who is going to be the catalyst that changes your culture, changes your worldview? Not necessarily the one that has the bigger guns. It's the one that has the bigger volume of experience to advise people to that there's a better way. That's Neelix, right? And it wasn't him when he was the trash man that they found in Caretaker. It's the Neelix now. And that Neelix is going to teach these people to be the new versions of themselves for generations to come. right? Because he's been educated to serve with empathy, to look at things in a larger, more galactic and complicated perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't do that, then the argument is binary. The way that you look at things, I'm right, you're wrong. It's not about I'm right or you're wrong. It's like, look, we can work together. We can coexist together, but you have to be able to come from a point of empathy, right? And if those people don't provide that, then it's like, you know what? We have to find a way to be able to communicate our needs, our reason, our ability to say like, hey, we deserve a chance at a happier future, right? Why can't we talk about that openly?
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com. And for more Star Trek news and discussion, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Renaissance Man.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Matt Esposito, Tom Kozak, Mike Richards, Mike Schabel, and Paul Shadwell. Either these Talaxians knew a shortcut to this part of the galaxy, or they did something Tom Paris would never do, namely, stop at a gas station and ask for directions. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.